Welcome, everyone. We are just waiting for everybody to fill in, but thank you so much for joining us tonight for this Hilo Town Hall. We've got a great lineup and a good list of speakers and presentations, so we'll just wait a couple more minutes for others to come in, and so we'll start in just about a minute or two. Mahalo for joining us. All right, well, I think as per usual, people are often running a little bit late, so we will go ahead and jump in. My name is Stuart Coleman, and I'm the Executive Director and co-founder of VI, and we really appreciate you taking the time to learn more about this issue, which is one of the larger problems that our state is facing, but as you'll see during the presentation, it's also an opportunity for workforce development and economic stimulus, and hopefully some federal grants. But I'll pass it to Gabby, who will start with an opening about Aloha.
Mahalo, Stuart. Aloha spirit is the coordination of mind and heart within each person. It is the working philosophy of Native Hawaiians and was presented as a gift to the people of Hawaii. Aloha means mutual regard and affection and extends warmth and caring with no obligation in return. Aloha Spirit, Chapter 5 of the Hawaii Revised Statutes.
And thanks to our legislators for bringing that into our Hawaii Revised Statute. It's such an important reminder of what makes Hawaii unique. So I want to briefly introduce the VI team because we just really have a super talented group here. John Anner is the co-founding partner and the managing director, but he's on the East Coast, so he won't be able to join us. Christina Comfort is the water quality specialist. Gabby Zimmer, who just read the Aloha Spirit statute, is a curriculum developer and instructor along with Courtney Kerr. And then we have Michelle Lee as well. And tonight we're really pleased and honored to have a number of our reps and council members joining us. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll introduce our list of speakers. Tonight we have Senator Inouye and Representative Nakashima, along with Councilmember Kimball joining us. And then for our expert Q&A panel, which will be later on this evening, we have Dr. Stephen Colbert and Dr. Tracy Wiegner, who've done some really cutting edge work on water quality around the state, but particularly on the Big Island. And then we have our own staff. And so as you go, if you want to think of questions that you want to ask, you can put them in the chat, or we can do popcorn going around with our panel at the end. But to start us off, we'd love if our three legislators would say a few words. So first we'll turn it to Senator Inouye. Mahalo for coming and saying a few words.
Thank you, Stuart. And thank you, Stuart and Courtney and all of you with the Y Innovations. We'd like to say aloha as well and mahalo for all of you for joining us on Zoom today to address this pressing issue for our state, the safe and effective conversion of Hawaii's cesspools. We currently have more than 80,000 cesspools, discharging approximately 50 million gallons of wastewater into our groundwater every day. The impact on the health of our citizens and the quality of our waters cannot be understated. Yet the responsibility of rectifying this lies heavily upon our citizens, a burden further exacerbated by the financial hardship that many have faced in recent years. The goal is clear. We must meet the mandate of Act 125 to upgrade, convert, or connect all cesspools in the state by 2050. But the path of this goal must be thoughtfully paved, considering a variety of funding options and programs from federal funding to local loans, from tax credits to public-private partnerships. While no singular program can be a panacea, we are here today to ensure we make the journey together. In closing, let us remember the magnitude of the task at hand. The sheer number of cesspools, particularly here on the Big Island, as mentioned, as we have 50,000 of the state's 88,000 cesspools, represents a formidable challenge. We know the conversion process is costly, a burden not easily borne by many homeowners. But we also know that if we navigate this journey thoughtfully, if we leverage a variety of funding programs, and if we remain committed to a collaborative effort, we can meet this challenge head on. But let me add in closing that we have some time, 27 years, to hook up to the sewer. However, it's incumbent upon Hawaii County to immediately start making improvements to its county sewer project. Aloha, and we'll look forward, and thank you all for joining us today for this wonderful and timely conversation. Aloha.
Mahalo. Thank you so much for your words. And then we'll pass it to Representative Nakashima.
Thank you very much, Stuart. This past year, a number of bills were introduced into the legislature as a result of a legislative task force, which brainstormed the legislative strategies to address the concerns associated with Hawaii's numerous cesspools that have a potential of harming Hawaii's precious aquifer. The Y was a participant in the task force and has been committed to raising the awareness of potential damage that cesspools can have on Hawaii's environment and precious water. We only need to look at the recent incidents at Red Hill on Oahu to see the potential damage that contamination of Hawaii's precious water resource can have on the people of Hawaii. I'd like to thank all of you, and a big mahalo for all of you willing to join us this evening and to learn a little bit more about the issues, some of the remedies that may be available to you to address your particular situation. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope it's a fruitful evening. Mahalo.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your words. And then we will turn to Council Chair Heather Kimball. Heather, are you there?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Stuart, for the invitation to come and speak tonight. And I haven't had a chance to see Representative Nakashima, but I wanted to just give him a shout out. Congratulations on your nuptials. And let me just give a shout out to Senator Inouye as well for your work at the state legislature with respect to the conversion of cesspools. You've already mentioned the act that requires the conversion by 2050. And I want to thank the state legislature for standing up and supporting the cesspool working group because that really gave us the first concrete set of data that will allow us to prioritize certain areas for either conversion or for hookup to existing wastewater systems. As Senator Inouye and Mark Nakashima have already mentioned, this is a challenging problem. It's a critical issue to protect our freshwater drinking resources as well as our nearshore marine quality. And I appreciate the opportunity to share some of the things that we're thinking about now that it comes down to the county for implementation. As Senator Inouye said so well, when it comes down to implementation, a lot of that falls on our shoulders here at the county. And I really appreciate some of the conversations that I've had with Vi and other stakeholders about looking at some of the ways to develop other alternatives and providing funding sources to help our county convert quickly and effectively. We know we're going to have certain challenges trying to convert so many cesspools by the deadline. So having a priority list is helpful, and really understanding what types of conversions are going to work best where and how we can incentivize and support that financially is going to be critical to meeting our targets and protecting our nearshore waters and our drinking water. Thank you.
Mahalo. Thank you so much, Heather. Appreciate it. So we will dive in and just for a quick kind of slide about who we are. I want to just tell you that, VI, our mission is to protect water quality first and foremost. That's our top priority. And we do this by reducing sewage pollution and restoring our watersheds. And when we were tackling this problem, we realized that there was a lack of really innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions to waste and wastewater management. So that's what we've dedicated ourselves to. And our vision is to do this by helping homeowners and communities with what is, honestly, a very difficult process of upgrading all these cesspools and filling septic systems around the state. But it provides an opportunity to introduce new systems that are really more affordable, efficient, and better for the environment. So we are kind of at a crossroads here in Hawaii, and we have a chance, even though we were the last state to ban cesspools, we have the chance to go and become a leader in this movement across the country. And we have 5 pillars where we do outreach and education like this. We introduce new innovative technology, and we've gotten some of these approved with the Department of Health. We do pilot projects to prove that they work. We advocate for policy and advocacy, so we appreciate our legislators joining us. And then we really are pushing for more financial resources for our homeowners to help them with the conversion cost. So just as a quick overview of our agenda tonight, we are going to be talking about cesspool, the issue, the impacts, legislation that's passed, and what we hope to move forward with, the priority areas across the state, and new technologies that are available to convert these cesspools, financial assistance, and our new Work for Water program, which is about workforce development, and then our panelist Q&A, just so you have a sense of what is coming up. But before we begin, I'm going to turn it over to our team for this pre-meeting poll. And this is very important for us. So I'll just ask you if all of you could respond. We'd love to get, at least 50 or 60 of you responding, because it does help us gauge kind of public input.
We would like to take a brief poll to help us better understand your needs. Please select the answer that best represents you. What are you looking forward to learning about the most from this presentation, where you can select all that apply? Are you aware? Oops. I'm gonna just mute you. Sorry, thank you. Okay. Are you aware of any relevant government mandates related to cesspools? There will also be 2 multiple choice questions where we will ask you to rank how much you disagree or agree with each of the statements on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. I'm familiar with the environmental and human health issues associated with cesspools. It's important to address wastewater issues in my community. Before I launch the poll, please remember to scroll down to see all of the questions. If you are on a phone or a tablet or other device, you may need to rotate the screen to be horizontal. If you have any questions or setbacks, please let us know in the chat, and remember to return to the poll by selecting the More button at the bottom of the screen. We'll give everybody a minute or 2 to respond to these questions.
Great, and if you guys could fill this out as fast as you can. Again, it's also part of grants that we're doing that we need to have a certain number of participants, and it really helps us just gauge public opinion about these issues and public awareness as well. So mahalo for your taking this poll.
All right, we're about 62 out of 73. So I will end the poll. Share the results for a moment here.
And you can scroll up, see all the answers. Thank you for showing that, Gabby.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
All right.
Now Christina is going to lead us in kind of giving us some basic overview of the cesspool issue and impacts.
All right. Sorry, 1 second. So first, we're just going to show a quick movie that gives a background on what is a cesspool, how does it affect water, and how does that affect our ecosystem. Okay, there we go. I was going to say I'm not seeing the slide, but it just jumped forward. Thank you.
Cesspool construction was recently banned in Hawaii. But what is a cesspool and what problems do they cause? A cesspool is basically a covered hole in the ground. It is sometimes lined with brick or concrete. Open joints in the lining allow liquid and solid waste to seep through. Cesspools are designed to dispose of waste, but not to treat it. If you have a cesspool, when you flush your toilet, use your kitchen sink, take a shower, or do laundry, untreated wastewater and gray water is directed into this hole underground. Human waste moves away from the cesspool through Hawaii's porous lava rock. Eventually, it reaches the water underground and contaminates it with dangerous pathogens and household chemicals. Because we live on islands, everything is interconnected. We rely on underground aquifers for our drinking water. Water from these aquifers is also connected to the ocean through a process called submarine groundwater discharge. When pollution from cesspools travels in water underground, it impairs our drinking water sources and negatively impacts our ocean ecosystems. Human waste contains viruses and bacteria that can make us sick if we consume water contaminated with them. Our waste naturally contains nutrients like nitrogen that can wreak havoc on coral reefs by causing algal blooms. The medications we take and personal care products we use can also negatively impact Hawaii's plants and animals. Hawaii has over 83,000 cesspools that contribute an estimated 52 million gallons of raw sewage into our environment every day. Because of these impacts, cesspools are required to be replaced with more effective forms of wastewater treatment by 2050. To continue to protect our health, that of our loved ones, and of our environment, cesspools need to be upgraded as soon as possible. For more information on cesspools in your neighborhood, visit hawaiicesspooltool.org. This video was produced by the Hawaii Department of Health, University of Hawaii Sea Grant College Program, and the Water Resources Research Center at the University of Hawaii.
And we thank our partners at Sea Grant for putting that video together. They've been kind of our stalwart partners in this issue. So first of all, we just want to go over like an overall difference between a cesspool and a septic tank. I think most of you get it, but it is important to review. They talked about what a cesspool is, and there's just very, very little, if any, treatment that goes on in that. And then a septic tank, all the waste goes into a septic system, goes into a septic tank. The solids settle at the bottom, and then the effluent is kind of filtered out, goes to an outlet, which goes into a leach field for disposal. The real treatment happens in the soil where the microbes eat the harmful kind of pathogens and all the things in the effluent that can cause problems. And so that's kind of a basic overview of the difference between these things, because some people do get them confused. Now, if we go on to the next slide, we're just going to give you a little overview about the legislative issues. And again, as Heather said earlier, we're appreciative to the senators and representatives who helped pass these bills. We started before 2016, but 2016 is when it really took off. We passed Act 120, which banned the construction of new cesspools. And as I mentioned, we were the last in the country to do that by several decades. We offered a $10,000 tax credit, which at the time wasn't terribly effective. And we can talk about why that was. We think it would be very, very effective now, and there are ways to amend the way it was done. Then in 2017, we passed Act 125 to ban all cesspools by 2050. And it required DOH to do a priority upgrade areas report and map. And then Act 132 the following year created the cesspool conversion working group, which I served on in the last 4 years with many others from 2018 to 2022. And that's when we turned in our final report. But last year we had a very productive session. We passed HB 2195, which created, well, I'll talk about that in the next slide, but it created funding for homeowners, which was great, because the funding is so desperately needed, because the costs can range anywhere from 25 at the very, very lowest up to 50,000. And then this past session, we had HB 1396, which was kind of an omnibus bill that had a lot of the recommendations of the cesspool working group, but that died. It got all the way through the House and the Senate, but died in conference committee. But as I said, the bills that we passed last year, HB 2195 was probably the most important, because that created a pilot where we could do reimbursable 20K grants to low and moderate income homeowners to help with their cesspool conversion. To tell you how popular that was, when they opened it up, all of the money, the $5 million that they put into that, there were so many applicants that it was done within a week. So that shows you how high the demand is and how high the need is for assistance with this funding. And we're hoping that that will be passed again because it was successful, and we can increase the amount of money put into that fund. Then there's HB 1806, which, if we can go back one slide, created, sorry, no, the slide that we were just on, my bad. That created new technology for cesspool replacement, and allowing for more than just septic systems and aerobic treatment units. So that's really important, because the technology is constantly changing. So we need to be open to new technologies coming in the state all the time. More competition leads to lower prices. And so we want more technology, more efficient sanitation equipment. And then finally, HB 2088 allowed property owners to finance the conversion of large capacity cesspools through what's called CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. And the law was amended to include cesspool upgrades, which is great. And yeah, this year, as I mentioned, we gathered at the Capitol. We had a lot of support. This was folks that were gathered, including the Lieutenant Governor, Sylvia Luke, and Don Chang, who's the director of DLNR. And it was to create pilot projects to expand the county sewer system, a new The most important thing, I think, is to create the recommendation to create a new cesspool section within DOH. Because right now they just don't have the bandwidth to permit all of the applications that are coming through and to approve all those permits and process them in a timely manner. So we think that's extremely important. We'll be bringing that back this session. And then requiring DOH to retain qualified consultants to identify, to do public outreach basically, and to help with education and doing the kind of thing that we're doing tonight, really educating homeowners. And then it also established an income tax credit for upgrading cesspools and requires information regarding cesspools to be included in seller disclosure forms when folks are selling properties. And that will help just to make sure people are aware of the issue when they're buying a new home.
All right, and now we're going to move on to showing what cesspool conversion priority areas exist on the Big Island. So Hawaii Island is pictured here in this map, and you can see that there are basically all of the cesspools have been categorized as priority level 1, 2, or 3. And it should be noted that no cesspool is considered a sanitary wastewater disposal method. So even a priority level 3 is still a cesspool that holds a pollution risk to the water, to coastal waters, to our aquifers. But priority level 2 and priority level 1 are even higher risk of causing harm. And these priority levels were established using a whole bunch of different factors, including soil types, including local ecology, local weather, geology, distance to water sources, et cetera. So Hilo, you can see, is listed as a priority level 2. So there are about 1,600 cesspools located in this priority 2 area of kind of the more urban area of Hilo. And that amounts to about 1 million gallons of effluent discharge per day. So you can see that a lot of that area fronts the Hilo Bay region. And then this is a slide that'll probably be a little more useful in our follow-up email. We'll send this to you. This is just a list of all of the local representatives, senators, city council members, just for your reference. So we'll send these slides out after the presentation, and just so you have the contact information of all your legislators in this region. And now I'll pass it on to Tracy and Steve to talk about sewage pollution in Hilo. We're really lucky to have 2 distinguished professors from University of Hawaii at Hilo here today to share some research.
Hi there. All right, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi there, my name is Steve Colbert. I'm here with Dr. Tracy Wigner from UH Hilo in the Marine Science Department. Sewage pollution is definitely a problem in Hilo Bay based on the work that we've done over the last few years to better understand the issue in Hilo. A lot of the work that I'll be showing today has been done by our students, our graduate students, and the funding for this, we're very thankful for the variety of funding sources that we've had to do this type of research over the last few years. Next slide, please. Hilo itself is the largest unsewered city in the nation. 60 to 70% of our homes are not connected to the sewer line. I live here in town and my home isn't connected. We're on a cesspool here as well. We've been doing work. One way of measuring sewage pollution is by using a fecal indicator bacteria. And one of the main ones used by the EPA is Enterococcus. Shown here on a map is a map of Hilo Bay, where we've done samples from Honolii on the far left there, through Hilo Bayfront at the bottom left, and then out across the Keaukaha shoreline, out to Richardson's, and then King's Landing is the farthest point there. The few points that are blue are places we've sampled repeatedly that have had good water quality. Anything that's green or yellow, red, any of the other colors, if it's not blue, those are places that, based on the Hawaii State Department of Health water quality standards, are out of compliance with their water quality standards. And it suggests that there's sewage coming into those areas. Anything that's yellow, orange, or red, those are all places where you would have, typically a beach would be posted saying that there was high enterococcus values and to be careful in the water until going back into that. Next slide, please. So enterococcus does come from other sources too, other mammals. So it can come from the guts of pigs or cats as well. So we also looked at we used genetic markers to identify a specific form of bacteria that's found in human guts. It's called human Bacteroides. And when we look for that in Hilo Bay, 40 to 60% of the time, we're seeing that human specific indicator of sewage present in the water. So it's just another indicator showing us that yes, human sewage is found in our waters. Next slide, please. And another way of looking at that sewage getting to the shoreline is doing dye tracer tests. So at 4 homes in Keaukaha, we did tests where we put dye into their cesspools or their septic tanks, and then we monitored how long it took for that dye to reach the shoreline. The longest it took was about 3 days, and the shortest it took was about 20 hours. It actually was much less than 20 hours. It was just that we had stopped sampling at 9 o'clock at night, and when we arrived at 7 o'clock in the morning, the water had turned green because of that dye reaching the shoreline. So the picture here that you're seeing, that green color, you can't really see sewage in the water. It typically doesn't have a color to it. But here when we have the dye, this dye came from a cesspool and reached the shoreline in a relatively short period of time. With the way septic tanks and cesspools are designed, it's the soil, it's the transit that it takes to the shoreline is when it's being treated. And this very fast transit that we have here, we have a lot of water flowing very quickly to the shoreline. That does not allow any time for that sewage to be broken down and digested. Next slide, please. Finally, we've done work to put this into a statewide context where we've done sampling in Hilo and using the same methods that were used on Maui, Oahu, and Kauai to identify where the most contaminated sites are in the state. And with that analysis, Hilo Bay came out as the 4th highest ranking site for sewage pollution in the state. And on Hawaii Island, Hilo Bay has about the third highest combined for indicators of sewage. So we're seeing these different indicators. So the big story is we do have sewage that's reaching the shoreline. We have clear indication of it. We're hoping to get a little bit more of this work published, this recent work on the cesspool flow rates published, so that hopefully we can encourage the Department of Health to up the Hilo priority from a priority zone 2 to a priority 1, because it really is a serious problem here in Hilo. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take questions at the end of this presentation.
Thank you so much, Steve. That was really a great overview. And yeah, it's shocking to see how highly Hilo Bay is ranked in those categories of sewage pollution. So for this next section of the presentation, I'm going to go over what technologies can be used to convert cesspools to better systems. Next slide, please. So to convert an individual wastewater system, the typical conversion is from a cesspool to a septic system. We went over what a septic system is a little earlier. It's basically just a tank that it's a holding tank that separates out some of the sludge and oils and greases, whereas most of the liquid leaches out into a field where it drains through the soil into the groundwater. This provides minimal treatment. Nutrients and pathogens, they can pollute water resources from septic systems almost as easily as they can from cesspools. So we are going to instead be looking at some innovative options to reduce pollution, and we're hoping that these can become the standard. We really want to make sure that we're leapfrogging past septic systems, which still pollute our water, into pollution reducing technologies. So on the individual home level, it's called an individual wastewater system. So that's just a system that's attached to a single home that treats the wastewater from that home. The goal for these individual systems is to upgrade from a septic system to a system that treats nitrogen and chemicals of emerging concern, which are various different types of persistent pollutants that can cause all kinds of various harms in the ecosystem. One type of system is called a layer cake model or a sand filter. Our partner, Elgin Corporation, has recently been approved by the Department of Health for a geotextile sand filter model that can do significant pollution reduction in a very similar setup to a normal septic system. There's also constructed wetlands and nature-based systems, which use plants to help achieve better treatment of the wastewater. And that can include things like bioreactor gardens. There's one pictured here that basically there's grasses, and you can also use hibiscus, native plants, et cetera, to help treat the wastewater as it's moving through your system. And we have some partners at a nonprofit called Bridge to Reefs and Leapfrog Design that provide these kind of systems. Finally, aerobic treatment units have been around for a while. These are our most kind of well-known or longest standing type of nutrient reducing system. And a good example of a high functioning aerobic treatment unit is from Fuji Clean. For innovative technology installations that have happened near Hilo, we have a really great example of an Elgin system that was recently installed at a Hawaiian Paradise Park home. So there's some photos from the installation. So this was basically an installation that was able to reduce the leach field size by 40% because of the higher treatment of the effluent. And since the leach field is really expensive, if you can get higher quality effluent, smaller leach field, that can bring down the cost for everyone. Thanks, next slide. There's also options for alternative toilets that can reduce water pollution. So these type of toilets wouldn't constitute a full cesspool conversion because you still have to deal with your kitchen black water and the gray water from your laundry and sinks, that kind of thing, but they do reduce water pollution. So one option is composting toilets. These can sometimes be approved by Department of Health depending on the situation, but it's a little bit trickier because composted waste is considered hazardous. VI has worked really hard to introduce incineration toilets in Hawaii, which are now approved by the Department of Health. And these produce only a pathogen-free ash. One consideration on these is that there's a use frequency that's allowed and it requires some electricity, but it is a way to have a waterless toilet with no effluent into the environment. Can I go back one slide, please? John. There we go. So for a lot of places, there's communities that are pretty densely packed, but are all on cesspools. And in that case, there might not be room to install individual systems at each house. And it might actually be more effective and more economical to install community scale wastewater systems. So this basically means that there's a cluster of homes that are all attached to a small scale wastewater system. An example of this type of system is called a pressurized liquid only sewer, or PRELOS. In this kind of system, there's a tank, as you can see on the bottom picture on the right, there's a tank installed at each property, but then the liquids from that tank are actually piped out to a central processing center instead of leaching into the yard of each house. This also allows for higher quality treatment at a centralized package plant. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry, that one. Yep, thank you. And there's also some really cool innovative solutions that are coming out for dealing with the sludge. So as you can imagine, a lot of this water is the wastewater is getting treated, but the sludge is settling into the tanks. So there's still solids that need to be dealt with. One of our partners at Biomass Controls has come up with a system that can actually take organic waste from sewage sludge and turn it into biochar, which is a carbon negative process, and it can be used as a soil amendment to increase crop yields and trap carbon. It can be used as a filter. So there's really cool opportunities for circular economy type principles on these community scale systems. Next slide, please.
Okay. Mahalo, Christina. VI is seeking funding sources to help homeowners with the process of converting their cesspools and failing septic systems. We're working with the EPA, the DOH, the USDA's Rural Development Office, and private foundations to bring together federal, state, and philanthropic funding to help homeowners. Because cesspools can have a negative environmental impact, the United States Department of Agriculture recognizes this issue and offers financial assistance through grants and loans for these conversions. The Water and Waste Disposal Loan and Grant Program supports the development of water and waste disposal systems in rural areas. This program can provide funding for cesspool conversion projects. Typically, the funding comes in the form of loans. Unfortunately, as you can see here on this map, Hilo Town is ineligible for most of these loans because it is not considered a rural area. The area you see shaded on the map in orange is not considered a rural area or eligible for these programs. To be eligible for Section 504 loan or grant, the applicant must live in a rural area and meet certain eligibility requirements shown here. If you are interested in finding out more about this funding option, you can visit the link within this slide. Again, we'll be sharing this slide deck in a follow-up email, or you can reach out to us and we will help you with the application process. In March of this year, as Stuart mentioned earlier, the DOH launched a cesspool pilot grant program to assist property owners with converting their cesspools. The grant program had a total of $5 million that was allocated on a first come, first served basis and was already all allocated in under 2 weeks of launching the program. This overwhelming amount of interest in the grant program demonstrates the need for more financial assistance to help homeowners. VI hopes that the legislature will fund the program again next year. Grants or forgivable loans are needed for those unable to repay loans and ineligible for the USDA rural loan programs. One opportunity is the use of the Clean Water State Revolving Funds for cesspool conversions through forgivable loans. VI is actively working on legislature to include more grants and loan programs. That takes us to the Work for Water program. We are excited to announce our new Work for Water program, which offers a unique opportunity for workforce development. The Work for Water program is a free entry-level education course aimed at inspiring individuals to join the wastewater industry and learn the foundational knowledge and skills needed to enter the workforce. The goal of the program is to address this critical technician workforce shortage required to replace the 83,000 cesspools with individual wastewater systems by 2050. The program is being funded by the Department of Labor, and we have partnered with the University of Hawaii, Hawaii Community College in Hilo, and the University of Hawaii Maui College. The Work for Water program is an entry-level wastewater introductory course covering wastewater management and career options in Hawaii. It is a 7-week hybrid course that will take place both online and in person. There will be 3 separate cohorts of learning on both Maui and Hawaii Island, specifically at Hilo Community College campus. The first cohort will start in September of 2023 and will end by 2024. Cohort 2 and 3 will take place in 2024. Topics for this program include wastewater science, wastewater regulations, design, installation, and maintenance of on-site systems, and career opportunities and preparedness. There are many benefits of the Work for Water program. The program will equip participants with the foundational knowledge and skills needed to enter and advance in the industry. By participating in the program, participants will take the first step in pursuing a career in the industry. These positions offer competitive salaries and a stable and rewarding career path. The program will provide resources and support for individual career pathways into the wastewater management fields, including design, installation, inspection, operations, maintenance, and engineering. With clean water and wastewater management services on the rise, there is no better time to join the industry. Another one of the many benefits of participating in the program is the opportunity to network and connect with potential employers. At the end of each learning cohort, VI will be organizing a networking event to connect our participants to an authentic audience of potential employers and industry stakeholders. At the end of the course, each participant will also earn an industry-recognized certificate of completion and a $500 stipend. One of the most important benefits is the positive community impact made by protecting Hawaii's natural resources. Before we move on to our Q&A session, we would like to take one last brief poll. All questions will be multiple choice, so please select the best answer that represents you. Similar to the pre-poll questions, there will be 3 multiple choice questions where we will ask you to rank how much you agree or disagree with each of the statements on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. Each statement will rank how much your awareness has increased after attending this presentation and town hall meeting. Finally, there will be one last question to gauge your interest in the Work for Water program I just described. If you or someone you know may be interested, please select yes in the multiple choice question and fill out the optional fill in the blank, where we kindly ask you to please share your information or their information with a contact or best phone or email so we can share more information with you after the meeting. Please remember to scroll down to see all of the questions. If you're on a phone or tablet or other device, you may need to rotate the screen to be horizontal. And if you have any questions or setbacks, please let us know in the chat, and remember to return to the poll by selecting the More button. After this, we'll start our Q&A.
And for those of you who finished the poll, if you want to include questions in the chat, feel free to put some questions in the chat, and we can start the Q&A soon. And thank you again for filling out these polls.
All right, I'll close the poll in about 1 minute to give everybody a chance to respond.
For those of you old enough to remember, it reminds me of, like, let's get the phone ringing, light up the polls with the telephone. I might be dating myself there. I think I am.
Okay, I'll just share the results for a quick moment. Okay. Mahalo nui loa for your time and participation tonight. Next, we'll start our Q&A, so please put any of your questions that you might have in the chat.
And also, if you want to raise your hand, we can do it that way as well. So we can do questions in the chat and raise your hands. All right. We have a question from Kiers. A residence has a cesspool, yet is not in any listed priority area. Would that residence still be potentially eligible for grant money? At this stage, it would not, unfortunately. Only the priority areas are where they're putting the funding, and priority 1 and 2 areas in particular. So, you know, that could possibly change, but I think they really want to focus on the priority areas where we know, you know, there's known or suspected, you know, damage to our nearshore systems or streams. Christina, you want to take turns?
Sure. So I saw a comment from Keith Neal that septic systems are not a solution for Hawaii County, especially for shoreline communities. Definitely agree with that. Best approach is to triage and connect as many homes as we can using sewer improvement districts and low pressure collection systems to reduce costs. Yeah, I think that's a really good point that, you know, we didn't touch on connecting to existing sewer systems. because, well, that is possible in some areas. In Hilo, it's there needs to be some pretty serious improvements to the Hilo wastewater treatment system. But if those improvements can happen and the capacity is there, then connecting to sewer is also a good option for homes that are within the lateral area. And let's see. Let's see, are holding tanks that can be pumped safer for the environment? I would say that in most situations, they're safer than a cesspool, because once it's pumped, it would go to a sewage treatment facility. So then the waste would be receiving some treatment as opposed to none at all through the cesspool. However, that pumping is probably going to be pretty expensive, and I don't know how often you would need to pump a holding tank, but I could see the costs adding up on that. It could definitely work for some rural situations, and depending on the pumping costs.
Yeah. And a good question. Corey asked, how many systems did the 5 million grant convert? The rebates were up to 20,000. And so, if we estimate an average cost of 40,000, some are definitely gonna be lower, some will be definitely higher. That would be about 250 systems that it would help with the conversion, which is remarkable that much money, only does that much good. And then I'll ask, if we are not low income, is there a way to receive funding for a cesspool conversion? And feel free to jump in if anybody else wants to tackle these. But just because we've been focusing on a lot of funding, at this point, it's not available for people who are not low and moderate income. But if we can pass a tax credit again, like we did in the one that expired in 2020, that could help middle and higher income folks with conversion cost. Last time the tax credit was only 10,000, and we think it needs to be a minimum of 20,000. So Christina, I'll kick it back to you.
Okay. And then also, as you guys are putting in the chat, remember, we also have all our legislators here and scientists from Hilo. So if you have a specific question for them, just call them out in the chat. Say question for so-and-so, and then we can pass it off to the right person.
Yeah.
Our next question is, at what altitude does a septic work? So I would say that it's more, for a septic system to be effective, it needs to have good soil. So it's not so much about altitude as it is about, although altitude does affect distance to groundwater, and that gives you a better chance of having enough good soil underneath your leach field to help with treating the effluents. However, on Hawaii Island, with the kind of cracked lava rock as the main substrate, there's not really any specific altitude that a septic system would work better, because I think almost anywhere on Hawaii Island, it would require soil replacement just to install the septic system, and then it can still travel quickly through the lava rock. In high elevations, it's going to take much longer. Timescale might be 100 years, but that can still affect the reef and the water for your keiki. So why not have homes switch to incineration toilets now? Stuart, do you want to talk about incineration toilets a little bit?
Yeah, the incineration toilets are a great option if people want to add a bedroom and don't want to have to add all the plumbing, or a bathroom rather, or if they're off grid and in remote areas. And we did convert one house in Kapa'a on Kauai, and we paired it with gray water recycling, and that was about as much as a cesspool conversion to a septic system, but we're working with some new technologies to bring that cost way down. So the toilets are great, but since Hawaii has 3 times the average national utility rates, the electricity can go up quite a bit. But for some people, there's no option, if they're off grid, so that's a really good option for them. And then who is doing the workforce trainings? I will pass that to Gabby or Courtney.
Sure, mahalo, Stuart. Courtney and myself will be teaching. I will be teaching on the Maui campus, and Courtney will be teaching at the Hilo campus. I noticed that you were wondering if there's anybody with the certification. We have a curriculum subcommittee that has been helping us. We have industry stakeholders, engineers. This is an introduction. It's a 7-week program. And so our goal is really to just get people excited, inspired, and really lay the foundation of knowledge and skills that's necessary. We also will have career pathways and educational pathways. For example, we've partnered with UHCC. They're offering a 3-semester course, and our goal will be to help each individual get into the career field that they are interested in, helping them with their resumes, and also providing career pathways with the list of steps. For example, if they want to be a licensed engineer or a licensed contractor, we have exact timelines, courses, and all of the resources and information available to help them get started on their way into one of those career or college pathways. I'm gonna pass it back to one of you guys.
Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah.
There's a few questions coming up in the chat about the process of converting cesspools. So there's questions about how long does it take approval to get your cesspool converted to a better system? How do you find out how to do that? Is there a list of engineers or anything like that? And on our website, we do have a list of engineers and installers by island. And then I saw Councilmember Heather Kimball, would you like to jump in? I saw you replying a little bit in the chat about that.
Thank you. I could unmute myself there for a second. Yeah, the process for getting the conversion permitted is relatively easy and does move through the permitting process pretty quickly. I'll check out what you guys have on your site and see if there's anything that we can add. There was the question from Miles if there's a form or a checklist. I do think we have something like that. So I'd be happy to share that and make sure that that's available on the VI site as a follow-up to this meeting.
Yeah, and thank you, Heather. Just because we love coupons, what you have to do when you work in this industry, we have something called the Potty Portal on our website. So if you just go to ycleanwater.org/potty portal, it has a list of engineers, contractors on that, kind of steps that a homeowner has to go through. Generally, it can take anywhere from minimum of 4, 5, 6 weeks, to 8 weeks. They've been fairly, good at this, but again, we have a low number of conversions right now. We're doing less than 200 conversions per year. This rebate program, ramped that up this year for sure. But to meet the deadline, we're going to have to multiply that times 10. We're going to have to be doing more than 3,000 a year. So that's going to have to be amped up quite a bit. Let's see. So I think we answered Miles' question. There's a question for our panelist, I think, about, where was that?
Is it the one about water circulation?
Yeah, thank you.
I saw, yeah, for the science team. Oh, and I see somebody has their hand raised too, so we'll get to that raised hand right after this one. There's regarding Hilo Bay and the bad water quality, how much does the lack of circulation play into the statistics? Steve or Tracy, do you have some thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Yeah. I have for our measurements, we were making measurements right at the shoreline. Usually where there's springs coming out of the ground. So the circulation that's happening offshore was less of an impact on the measurements that we were making. So, and it's not just behind the breakwater. So yes, behind the breakwater, that circulation does have an impact of holding the water closer to shore for a longer period of time, but that's less so out in the open shoreline of Keaukaha, where we still see high Enterococcus values and where we see springs that are directly connected to cesspools in the community.
The other thing I was going to add was this was a question about the sewage treatment plant in Hilo. We're working on a project to try to distinguish how much of the wastewater that we detect in places like Pui Bay, how much comes from cesspools versus from the outfall pipe. But the outfall pipe, they do treat the sewage. The sewage coming from the cesspools is raw, so it doesn't have any treatment. So we are trying to figure out how to parse that out, because we do know there's quite a bit of concern from the community about the outfall line.
And while we have you kind of featured on screen, if people want to raise their hand, and we will get to the person on the iPad, but have direct questions about water quality in this area, because we're really lucky to have you know, these to answer any water quality questions, because they're some of the top researchers in the state on this issue. So anybody in particular want to ask anything about water quality issues? All right, maybe we can have Senator.
I thought I saw, yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, and then the person on the iPad.
Can I go and speak as well?
Please.
Yeah, my question, sorry, earlier I did type in Stuart, but actually I wanted to talk to Stephen at Hilo regarding, and I'm so happy that you picked Hilo Bay and where it stands as you presented. Now, the question I was going to ask you is in the measurement, and Tracy just kind of talked about it a little about the outfall. So how much of the outfalls from the President County sewage treatment plant is an issue, is a big problem?
I was just thinking about that. So where we've sampled inside the breakwall,
we've had quite a bit of outfalls.
Right. And I'm just thinking, like, inside the breakwall, there isn't an outfall, but we get very, very high counts. Part of that is probably cesspools. Part of it is also from soils. But then when we go to the Keaukaha coastline, there are places that are pretty far away from the outfall that have high Enterococcus values. And those are in locations also where Steve conducted dye tracer studies. And the dye emerged from the cesspool within less than 9 hours. And I mean, in fact, when that happened, it was quite a big to-do, because community members noticed the water changing color, and everybody was called: the fire department, the police department, the sewage treatment plant. And that was from a home. And the bacteria we measured that day was very high. So that was directly from a cesspool, not the outfall.
Okay, I wasn't able to get on to the community talk story on the west side, but Stephen, regarding were you involved with the presentation for the West Hawaii's talk story, similarly to what we're doing? Okay, Pauka. Yeah, that was in my district up until last reapportionment. So. And we provided, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the study that was been done at Pauka a couple of years ago. I think we provided $1.something million. So can you kind of brief us as to where we are with that study? Sorry, I'm going to get into Pauka because that's one of the highly polluted areas as well. Was that #1 in West Hawaii? Okay.
Number one on our island.
Oh, okay.
And then I would say I would amend the statewide report based on our studies and put Hilo at #2, because the travel time from the cesspool to the shoreline is much faster than even faster than some places in Pauka.
Yeah, I did that on my notes as well. You were going to probably put that as a number one as well.
Yeah, for sure. Based on, I would say the dye tracer tests have been very telling.
I'm very interested with new technology and the options for conversion. So hopefully are there several models to choose from, or are we just looking at the ones that you guys are doing is it a testing model, or I'm sure new technology will be much cheaper.
Was that in terms of the models that used for determining priority levels?
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of being careful what kind of information was used for making those. And, a lot of it had to do with how the groundwater flows to the ocean, which is poorly constrained. And I think with our measurements, we're getting better constraints on it. And so those models can be updated. They used the best information they had at the time. And this study that we've just completed in the last year, it came after that initial prioritization was done. So I hope that can be upgraded in the future.
So with 50 states and with Hawaii being the only tropical state in our country, who is next along the lines that have polluted areas?
Well, Florida's, we look a lot to like what's happening in South Florida because they have similar hydrology, similar fast flow of water through their system. And they've gone through the conversion to septic tanks, hoping that would be a solution for them. And what they're doing now in a lot of communities in South Florida is converting to sewage treatment plants because of the septic tanks were insufficient for treating the sewage problems that they have.
What about Alaska and the northern western states?
They have such different geology compared to what we have, and different necessities. Our coral reefs are low nutrient environments. And so removing the nutrients from the groundwater is so important for our coastal ecosystems. And that's something that most other coastal communities at temperate areas don't have to deal with.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you so much for your question.
The other thing I was going to mention about how the prioritization model worked was they wanted consistent data across locations. So they were statewide databases. They didn't use information that was specific studies to a location. So like the work that we've done for Hilo and also Pauka and now in Kailua Kona, that isn't integrated because that kind of detailed information isn't available for all the places that they were evaluating for prioritization.
Yeah.
So it's a different database. We have much more detailed information about some specific locations, but that was not incorporated into their assessment.
And I think that's a great point to mention because we in the cesspool conversion working group, there were a number of us that were pushing for, this map and prioritization is going to constantly have to be updated as new information comes available. It might not be available all the way across the state, but we might as well the best, water quality data that we have, like the research that you all are doing. The I'm not sure who it is with the iPad. You have been patiently waiting, so I'll let you do yours. Thank you so much.
Hi, yes. I did, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're good.
Okay. Yeah, I posted a comment. I'm not, things are moving too fast. Actually, I just moved in recently to Hilo. I have been involved in water sciences for 50 years, academic work. Seems to me ecological sanitation, which is gaining a lot of popularity in rest of the world, Sweden, Germany, Japan, China, Sri Lanka, many places. Perhaps we need to look into it. Ecological sanitation for Hawaiian conditions, I think composting toilet, on-site treatment with recycling of the treated waste, because our soils are extremely low in nutrients and so on. And that would also solve another problem of agriculture in Hawaii, which is only, which is pathetic almost, that we do not, we depend so much, 80+% on imported food. We could virtually produce 100% of the food here. So that process will also contribute to it. That also generates the carbon in the soil, and that also sequesters the carbon from the global climate change issues and so on. So perhaps composting toilets, on-site treatment, and constructed wetlands, the whole combination of those might need to be looked into theoretically as well as through pilot studies and so on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. And we agree, if you're going to treat all of this, we need to, we're going to spend money treating it. We need to reuse those resources, especially on the west side of Hawaii Island, where the water is desperately needed, but also in other areas where the nutrients do a lot of damage in the ocean, but we want them in the land. So it's a very good point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Stuart, I wanted to jump in on a couple of things that I was seeing in the comments. Questions about, are we looking at more distributed systems? Are we looking at the pressurized systems in the county? And are we looking at wastewater improvement districts? And the answer to all of that is yes. We have quite a few things going on right now around wastewater in the county. And we're really trying to prioritize certain things. One is the upgrade to the Hilo wastewater treatment plant, because that is so critical to get that repaired and replaced essentially, and get people hooked up to that for that area. But in other areas like Miloli'i, we're looking at procedures to do a distributed system out there and how that might work and how we might fund it for the homeowner. What I would say in general is that I want to mahalo Dr. Wigner and Dr. Colbert, is that Colbert, sorry, I always get you, Stephen Colbert. Colbert, for the data that they've been putting together and producing, because from the legislative standpoint, we can't treat some areas differently than others unless we have data to back it up. And what we're looking at with Miloli'i right now is having data to say this area is different than other areas and needs to treat wastewater differently. A simple septic conversion is not going to be enough. There needs to be some denitrification or treatment of nutrients. So I really appreciate the work that they've done and others to help us really figure out how we can, from a legislative standpoint, back up some of our decision making around different wastewater treatment applications in different areas. So thanks.
Thank you for that, Heather. And while you're on screen, I'll just, Akori asked, for like the Kauai and Waikoloa area, there have been efforts to engage the hotels and use their resources to build treatment facilities. Can you maybe comment on that? If there's anything that the county is working on?
Yeah, that's definitely part of the equation as well, particularly in the Pauka area. There is Manalani there that is a potential hookup option. Something that's going on right now is an integrated wastewater management plan for the county. And that plan came out of the money that went out to Pauka for the wastewater assessment there, as well as Puna, and then we added another $500,000. The nice thing about this assessment is it's going to help us figure out the places that are appropriate for these decentralized systems, the places that are appropriate to connect people to existing wastewater treatment areas like Hilo and Kealakehi area, and where we're going to have to look at individual household level conversions. The big question about this is all the financing, and that's another aspect that was critical to this integrated wastewater plan, is we did require some determination about how we fund all of this. And so I think we've all agreed at the county that there is no one size fits all option, and the more data we have to make better decisions about specific areas and what's appropriate there and the type of funding mechanism, the better we're going to be able to come up with the right solution for each area.
Can I ask Heather, a comment or a question?
Please.
Am
Go
I
ahead.
on? Okay.
Yes, sure.
All right. Okay. Heather, has the county considered perhaps looking out, including an RFP proposal for those who have studied into new technology regarding to other options available? That would be great to know who's developing new sources and try and see if we could use a model and use it as a research project in a community, whether it's, Hilo or those areas that are cited as the worst polluted areas.
Yes,
that would be
Senator.
interesting to find out.
Yeah, Senator. I think the area that you mentioned earlier, Pauka, is a critical area, and then also that Miloli'i area. One of the things about Miloli'i is it's 900 lots that could be developed. Of those, 200 are developed at this time, which means we can still get ahead of it at this point if we can mandate the right sort of wastewater treatment. So one of these innovative solutions. That nearshore area looks like Pauka did 40 years ago. And so we want to make sure that we protect that as much as we can. So looking at pilot projects in Miloli'i and Pauka for proof of principle.
And community, I think community-based options, I think, was it mentioned earlier, perhaps looking at how you could use a model as a community-based treatment.
Exactly, and I think that liquid only pressurized system model is a great idea for Miloli'i, especially if we can recapture some of the water to be used for irrigation, which I think was the other thing that came up in
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I think to Keith's point, he said it's crazy to put potable water on golf courses. The solution is to treat to R1 standard of water quality, which is one of the higher forms of treatment, and then sell the water to golf courses.
Yeah, but you know what though? I need to say though, there's no golf course on the Big Island that use potable water for the golf courses. Not for the golf courses.
That's good to hear. That's good.
There's none. I don't think any of the county has not approved of any potable water use.
Yeah, because there's so many uses and desperate need for clean drinking water.
Oh, absolutely.
And so, we need to just recycle this water. And that is where we're going in the future. If you think about it, if you want to talk about crazy, our traditional municipal system is based on, literally 19th century technology where we pump all this waste miles and miles. We spend so much money to treat it, and then we truck the solids to a landfill where they continue to leach into the ground with all the contaminants. And then the wastewater we pump out into the ocean, and it still has the nutrients, and that's the last place we want it. So we have to rethink the way we treat our wastewater. And in the future, and not too distant future, we will be recycling most of the wastewater and the solids.
Okinawa is a country that one should be visited, because when I was there back on the council, I think they were already using recycled water for all of their government properties, parks, and everything else, and they're already doing it. So we can probably go and see how they're doing, and their recycled water plant. That was amazing to see.
Yeah, and where was that again?
Okinawa.
Yeah, Singapore is also an international leader, and in the Netherlands they're really doing a lot of great work. Yeah, and we have the opportunity to do it, especially with all the federal funding that's available right now.
Sure.
Yeah. Other questions, if people want to raise their hands, their digital hands, or put questions in the chat. And John said, for our information, the solids that go to the Waikoloa are in a lined pit. Yeah. which is good. It's just, there's been a lot of stories, and there was a huge thing on Oahu where it was supposed to be going to a line pit, and it wasn't. It was leaching out, and during a major rainstorm, you had all kinds of waste, including hazardous medical waste that went down to the coast. So it's something we always have to be careful of. But yeah, thank you for that assurance. It's good that it's lined as it should be.
Stuart, one other comment I would make, and I was reminded of it looking at the comments going through right now, is one of the biggest challenges we have is, I mean, there is the money challenge. How are we going to pay for all this stuff? But then there's the who's going to operate it. And we have a lot of openings in the county right now in the Department of Environmental Management, and we have a lot of folks that are near retirement. And so I love that you have your program to help train people and get them started into this industry. But one of the things that I need to put out there broadly to the public is just we need to encourage people in both the wastewater, the solid waste, and actually the drinking water field, because we're losing technical expertise and engineers really quickly these days, and we need to make sure we have those staff available to provide these services to the community.
And that's such an important point, because we know wastewater might not sound like the coolest thing, but we have a ridiculous joke that we say that we're making sanitation sexy again, and there is a desperate need in every county, but this is also not just Hawaii. It is across the country and around the world. We need people in these fields, and it's good pay. So if you know any younger folks or people who are switching careers that are interested, please steer them our way. You get a $500, allotment, allowance, whatever, for finishing the course. And we desperately need people here in Hawaii. This could be a way we could bring people back home to Hawaii.
We have to get into our high schools and start getting our graduates educated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's the positive thing. It is, as people have mentioned in the chat, the prices are really astounding. It was nice to see one person said that he did his whole thing for $20,000. That is the lowest I've heard anybody in the last 4 years. So that's amazing. But generally, everything else we've heard is more expensive. But the upside is that there are jobs. These are long-term jobs that pay well, living wage, and that there are opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities for mom and pop, pumping facilities, companies that do pumping of the septic tanks, companies that do installations, engineering, all the different contracting and advanced manufacturing and assembly here. We have a number of companies that want to open offices up here so they can do assembly, which will save on the shipping cost. So there are a lot of opportunities, and feel free to reach out to us. And you can email info@vicleanwater.org if you have some ideas or connections or questions that you want to follow up on. And maybe we'll take one last question as we wrap up. Christina, did I miss any?
I tried to get to as many as we could. For those of you guys who have been following along in the chat, hopefully you see we've been replying to questions in the chat as we've been talking to try to get some more of them. There was one question about real-time water quality monitoring that I said, hopefully I can get there if there's enough time. So maybe I can speak to that really quickly. Will we ever have real-time water quality monitoring? That's a great question, because the way that that we detect sewage pollution in the water right now depends on taking a water sample, taking it back to the lab, and checking for fecal indicator bacteria or other types of contaminants, or the dye tracer studies. These things are not instantaneous. You don't know the results immediately or even in a couple hours. It takes a couple days. So I'm working on 2 different technologies with a group of collaborators at University of Hawaii at Manoa, and we are working on, first of all, instrumentation that you could potentially put in the water, and it could serve real-time information through the internet on wastewater pollutants. So we're basically in the process of trying to see if this technology can work in the Hawaii environment and see if we can get real-time information that way. And then the other thing is rapid DNA detection. So we're working on some beach kits for rapid fecal indicator bacteria detection that, one vision could be all the lifeguard stands in Hawaii could have a rapid detection kit, and they could test it every day at low tide and see if there's, we'd know in a couple hours, 2 to 3 hours in the rapid kit. So we're working on those through some projects at UH, really exciting, cutting edge stuff. It's not quite ready to launch yet, but hopefully that will be possible in the near future.
Yeah, and thank you this is one of the most engaged town halls we've had. We really appreciate your questions, your feedback. As folks have said, as Shannon mentioned, this is an incredibly important issue, but the high cost is one of the biggest issues. And just, believe me, we are working with it. We are working with legislators. We really hope to take advantage of federal, grants that are available right now. And that window is open. If there's a change in administration, we don't know if these grants will still be there. So now is the time to do it. And the main thing is that we all have to work together. Like this town hall, it takes a lot of people to do this, and it's not just, the state. It's not just the counties. It's not just nonprofits. We're going to all have to work together on this. Many hands make light work. So I want to thank our staff who just worked so hard and have done an amazing job. And I also want to really do a special shout out to our legislators and to Senator Inouye and Rep. Nakashima and Council Chair Heather, who are just really on top of this issue and helping to move the state forward. And we hope that this next session will be our most productive, and that we can pass grants, that we can pass tax breaks and really access some of that federal money. So please work with your legislators, and let's try to, to do this and stay in touch. Yeah, we appreciate all of you being involved.
Thank you very much.
Mahalo.
All right, I'm gonna save the chat before we all hop off. I'll just work on that for a second.
Thank you.
It looks like the update changed the way you do it. I was trying to find the save.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure that out too.
Like it puts it in the meeting chats, but I would like to download.
And Rep.
I'm just copying the text as a back.
Yeah, thank you. Let's continue to work together and see if we can pass some bills next session.
Sorry, I was unmuted, Christina. Oh, I'm sorry. Stuart, did not mean to interrupt you. I have the chat saved, Christina.
Okay.
As a TXT file. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, well, I think we will wrap it up then. Anything else we need to take care of, team?
No.
All right.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Mahalo.
Yeah, thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.